The midday sun shone bright over the city of Halloween. The air was warm and full of sound. Traders shouted, children ran through the streets, and workers hurried home from the docks. Among them was a young man named Ethan Cole. He worked as an engineer for the city's skyrail system. He liked machines more than crowds, and he liked quiet more than noise. That day he had finished his shift early. He walked along the old orchard road that led to his small house near the edge of the city. It was peaceful there. The faint hum of the sky rails sounded far away, and the scent of blooming trees filled the air. But halfway down the road, everything changed. The light above him flickered for a moment. The wind stopped. A strange hum filled the air, low and deep, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Ethan looked up and saw something shining, falling slowly from the clouds. Small at first, no bigger than a bird, but as it got closer, he saw that it was a craft, silver and smooth like polished stone. With a faint hiss, it landed in a patch of long grass near the trees. There was no smoke or flame, only silence. Ethan's heart thumped so loudly he could hear it. For a few seconds he stood still, unsure whether to run or to step closer. But curiosity always had a strong grip on him. He walked toward the craft. The surface of it glowed faintly in the sunlight. It had no markings, only a single narrow door along one side. As he reached out his hand, the door slid open with a soft sigh. Inside it was dim, with faint blue light shining from narrow veins in the walls. Then he saw movement. Something small stepped forward, almost too small to believe. It was a young girl, no taller than his knee, wearing a gown of pale silk and tiny silver shoes. On her head rested a delicate crown, bent slightly as if from a fall. Her hair gleamed like soft gold. Her face was calm, but her eyes were full of fear and pride at the same time. Ethan blinked and rubbed his eyes, half thinking he was seeing things. But she spoke before he could say a word. "I need shelter," she said. Her voice was like a bell, quiet and clear, filled with grace that didn't seem human. "They're searching for me." Ethan crouched down beside her.
Who?
"The palace guard," she said. "I ran away." Ethan looked back toward the city. In the far distance, he could already hear faint shouts and the clatter of armor. His mind raced. A runaway princess? But she was so small, like something out of a storybook. How could anyone want to harm her? "You're a princess?" he asked softly. She nodded. "My name is Helena. I can explain later, but please, they must not find me now." Her tiny hands trembled as she looked at him. She tried to hide her fear, but her lip quivered. Ethan's heart softened. He had never been part of royal matters. He fixed engines and rail lines, and sometimes repaired the copper lights at the harbor. But something about this small girl's voice made him forget all reason. "All right," he said at last. "Come with me." He took his old coat and gently wrapped it around her like a cloak. She disappeared inside it completely, only her soft golden hair peeking from the collar. Ethan slipped back toward the road, walking fast but careful not to draw attention. Behind him, men's voices shouted orders, and the sound grew louder. They crossed a narrow bridge and turned down a path that led to an old workshop near the railway yard. It was a little run-down, full of tools and metal scraps, but it was quiet and safe. He closed the wooden door behind them and took off the coat. Helena looked around with wide eyes. "Is this where you work?" she asked. "It was before they built the new depots," Ethan said. "No one uses this place now." She nodded. For a moment she looked less like a princess and more like a child who had lost her way. She touched a broken gear on the workbench. "You fix things?" "Mostly machines," he said. "I don't know much about fixing royal troubles." A small laugh escaped her lips. It was the first time she had smiled since she had arrived. That smile made the old workshop feel warmer. Outside, the sound of galloping horses passed along the main road. The windows rattled. Ethan froze, listening. Helena clutched his sleeve, her eyes wide, but the sound faded in a few moments, and the street grew silent again. She sat on a stool, tucking her legs close, and looked up at him. "I didn't mean to bring danger to you," she said softly. Ethan shook his head. "Too late to worry about that. We'll think of what to do next when the city sleeps." Helena nodded slowly, her small face calm. The glow from a lamp nearby cast golden light across her crown and the rough tools on the wall. Ethan realized then that his quiet life had ended the moment she stepped out of that silver craft. Something far larger than his simple days had just begun. The morning light slipped through the cracks of the old workshop, painting lines of gold across the floor. Ethan rubbed his eyes and looked around. The small princess sat by the workbench, fast asleep on a folded cloth. Her tiny crown rested beside her, shining faintly in the sun. For a moment, he wondered if he had dreamed the whole thing. But when she stirred and blinked at him, the truth settled back into his mind. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice still soft from sleep. Ethan smiled a little. "Good morning. You were talking in your sleep." Her cheeks reddened. "What did I say? Something about a door that leads to peace?" he said. Sounded important. Helena sighed and looked at the wall. "It is something my mother used to say. Before she passed away, she told me there is always a door to peace, but only a few are brave enough to open it." Ethan nodded. He did not know how to answer. Words like that belonged in stories, not among gears and wrenches. He turned to the window, listening to the faint noise from the city. Patrol horns called in the distance. The king's guards were still searching. "You should stay inside today," he said. "They will keep looking." Helena looked at him with steady eyes. "You help me, even though you do not know me. Why would you risk that?" Ethan shrugged. It felt right. Sometimes right things are not safe things. A small smile tugged at her lips. She stood and walked to the shelf where copper parts were stacked. She touched a rusted gear the size of her arm. "Even small parts matter," she said. "This wheel may seem useless alone, but together with others it gives life to something bigger." Ethan glanced at her, realizing she was not talking about machines anymore. They spent the morning hidden away. Ethan brought her crumbs of bread and pieces of fruit. She told him about the palace, the councilmen, and the endless ceremonies that kept her locked indoors. She said her father was kind, but weak before his advisors. They wanted her promise to marry a man from a rival province to seal a trade agreement. "That is why they are hunting me," she said quietly. "To bring me back for a wedding I did not choose." Ethan sat on the floor beside the workbench thinking, "And your father? Does he know you ran away?" "I left him a letter," she said. "I hope he understands." The sound of marching boots echoed again from outside. Ethan peeked through the small window. 2 guards walked by, searching the side streets. He held his breath until they disappeared behind a fence. Helena stayed quiet, her small hands clasped in her lap. The first time she looked less like a leader and more like a frightened child. Ethan spoke softly. "Don't worry. They will not find you here." She looked up at him. "You remind me of the men who built the palace hall. They worked in silence, but their hands carried more truth than all the council meetings combined." He laughed lightly. "Oh, I'm not sure about that. I just fix what's broken." "Then you are exactly what this world needs," she said. The words surprised him. Simple as they were, they carried a weight he could feel deep in his chest. The afternoon passed slowly. Helena explored the corners of the workshop, watching as Ethan repaired a small engine. He showed her how a spark coil worked, and how the wires carried light. She touched everything with wonder, asking questions like a child hearing new music. He caught himself smiling more than he had in years. As dusk approached, Ethan stepped outside to fetch water. From the hill, he could see the main road alive with soldiers. The king's banner fluttered in the breeze. He knew they would soon be checking every house. When he returned, Helena saw the uneasy look on his face. "They are closing in," he said. "We cannot stay here much longer." Her eyes filled with worry, but then turned firm. "Then we move after dark." He stared at her. "Move where?" "There is a place beyond the river," she said. "An old chapel where my mother used to pray. It is hidden in the woods. No one goes there anymore." Ethan looked down at his hands, grease still marking his palms. He was not a soldier or a hero, just a man with a few tools and bad luck. Yet something told him that if he let her go alone, the guards would catch her before sunrise. "You will need help," he said at last. She looked up at him with hope. "You will come?" "I will," he said. "But first, we wait for nightfall." They sat side by side in the faint glow of the workshop lamp. The tiny crown lay between them on the table. Outside, the last traces of sunlight vanished behind the roofs of Halloween. The wind moved softly through the trees, carrying the distant sound of horns. Ethan thought of the peaceful life he had before and knew it would never return. The world had already changed the moment he opened that silver door. Helena's eyes stayed fixed on the fading light, and though fear lingered, there was also something else: hope, quiet but strong, waiting for the first star to appear. The night spread its long shadow over the city of Halloween. The streets were quiet, and only the sound of distant bells drifted through the air. Ethan waited beside the small window, peering into the dark. The workshop smelled of oil and metal, but beneath that smell was the soft scent of bread that Helena had warmed on the tiny stove. She sat on the stool, her small hands folded on her lap, her eyes bright even in the dim light. "It is time," she said in a hushed voice. Ethan nodded. "Stay close to me. Do not speak if someone passes us." He opened the door carefully. The street was empty, lit only by the pale moon. They slipped out and walked along the narrow back lanes. The sound of the river could be heard far away, steady and calm. Ethan carried a small pack with food and tools, while Helena stayed wrapped in his old coat. Her silk shoes made no sound on the road. As they moved deeper into the city's edge, the sound of armor grew faint. The guards were searching near the main gates, not on the outer paths. Still, Ethan walked fast, his heart beating hard. Every shadow seemed alive. Every gust of wind sounded like a whispered command. Eh? They reached the old orchard, the same place where Ethan had first seen her. The silver craft still lay there, hidden under vines and dust. Its light had faded, but it looked peaceful now, as if part of the earth itself. Helena stopped for a moment and touched its side gently. "This is where my journey began," she said softly. Ethan looked at her, "And it's not where it ends. We must keep moving." She nodded, and they continued. The road ahead led down toward the river, where a wooden bridge crossed into the northern valley. Beyond that valley was the forest chapel she had told him about. But before they could reach the bridge, they saw torches glowing in the distance, guards standing watch. Ethan crouched behind a row of barrels and motioned for Helena to hide beside him. The guards were speaking to each other in low tones. "They say the girl was seen near the lower roads," one guard said. "The king has promised gold to anyone who finds her." "The king's reward means little," said the other. "I only hope she is safe. She was always kind when she greeted us in the courtyard." Helena's eyes softened as she listened. "They are not all cruel," she whispered. Ethan whispered back, "Maybe not, but we can't risk being seen." They waited until the guards turned away. Then Ethan led her under the bridge, rather than across it, where the shadows were thick and water dripped softly between the stones. He held his hand out to steady her as they crossed on the narrow ledge. She slipped once, but he caught her before she could fall. When they reached the other side, Helena let out a deep breath of relief. The valley was dark, filled with tall grass and the smell of rain. The moonlight fell through the clouds, showing the path that wound between the hills. For a while they walked without speaking. Crickets chirped, and far behind them the city lights looked small and calm. Helena finally spoke. "When I am far away, will they stop hunting me?" "Maybe not right away," Ethan said. "But once they believe you are gone, they will stop searching. Then your father will call them back." She looked down. He must be so worried. "I do not hate him, but I could not marry that man. My people deserve peace, not another trade war." Ethan listened quietly. He did not understand the world of crowns and councils, but he understood her words. She was young, brave, and honest in ways that power never was. As they climbed the last hill before the forest, the distant sound of horses echoed again. Torches flickered along the lower valley road. The searchers had found a trail. Ethan cursed under his breath and scanned the area. Then he saw a ruined watchtower standing near a grove of trees. "Over there," he said, pointing. "We can hide for a while." They ran through the grass, the wind pressing at their backs. The old tower was half broken, its stones covered in ivy. Ethan helped Helena climb through the narrow arch. Inside, the air smelled of moss and rain. He found a dry corner and motioned for her to rest. She sat quietly, breathing hard. "Will they come this far?" "Not tonight," he said. "They will keep to the main path. We have time until dawn." She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. Her crown was tucked in her pocket now, hidden from view. Ethan sat nearby, keeping watch through the cracks in the wall. The moonlight poured through in thin lines, touching her face gently. For a long while neither spoke. The silence felt almost sacred. Then Helena said softly, "Ethan, when this is over, what will you do?" He thought for a moment. "Maybe fix a few more engines. Maybe find a place where the sky is quieter." She smiled faintly. "You speak as if peace is something you build with your hands." "Maybe it is," he said. "One part at a time." Helena looked toward the open roof, where stars flickered above. "Then perhaps I will help you build it." Ethan met her eyes and saw strength there. Not of a princess born to rule, but of a girl who still believed in the promise of goodness. Outside, the far-off sound of hooves fell silent. The world settled into stillness. In that small broken tower, a runaway princess and an ordinary man shared the same quiet hope, waiting for the first light of morning to guide their way forward. The morning sun rose slowly over the valley, painting the sky with pale orange light. The old watchtower stood quiet among the trees, half covered in vines and shadows. Inside, Helen awoke first. She stretched her small arms and listened to the calm rustle of leaves outside. Ethan was sitting near the entrance, sharpening a broken knife on a piece of stone. His eyes were tired, but when he saw her awake, he smiled faintly. "We made it through the night," he said. Helena nodded. "We should move before the guards come this way." Ethan stood and looked north. "The forest is ahead. Once we are inside, the trees will hide us. One will find us there." They left the tower quietly. The grass was wet with dew, and birds sang from the branches above. The path was soft and cool under their feet. Helena walked beside Ethan, her small figure hidden under his coat. Now and then she stumbled on the uneven ground, and he would reach out his hand to steady her. She always thanked him softly, never complaining. As they walked deeper into the forest, the light dimmed. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. For a while, all they heard was the faint buzz of insects and the whisper of their steps. It felt like another world, far away from kings, soldiers, and fear. After a long walk, they reached a clearing. In the middle stood a stone building covered in moss. The old chapel was smaller than Ethan had imagined, its roof half broken, its door hanging from one hinge. Yet Helena's face lit up when she saw it. "This is it," she said quietly. "My mother used to come here before I was born. She called it the Chapel of Mercy." They stepped inside. The air was cool and still, carrying the scent of old wood and forgotten prayers. Sunlight streamed through a broken window, lighting the faded markings on the floor. Helena walked to the front, where a small altar still stood. Her tiny hands touched the cold stone gently. "She used to say this place had a spirit of peace," Helena whispered. "When she knelt here, she said her heart felt light, even during war." Ethan looked around. "Then it's a good place to rest. You should eat something." She nodded, sitting down on a flat stone near the window. Ethan shared some bread and water from his pack. They ate in silence, but it was not an awkward silence. It was gentle, calm, almost holy. After they finished, Helena gazed outside. "Ethan, what do you think will happen now?" He took a deep breath. "Soon the guards will realize we left the city. They will search the roads, but if we stay quiet for a few days, they will grow tired. Then, I can take you farther north, maybe to the mountain villages. People there do not care about royal matters." She smiled. "You speak as if this is easy. It's not," he admitted. "But I've fixed broken engines before. The hardest parts just take more time." Her soft laugh filled the chapel like sunlight. For a moment she almost looked happy again. They spent most of the day there. Helena explored the empty rooms, humming a tune under her breath. Ethan repaired an old lantern he found near the altar, using parts from his bag. When night came again, the lantern gave off a warm glow that filled the chapel with soft light. While the wind whispered through the cracks, Helena sat near the doorway, looking up at the stars. "My father must be so worried," she said quietly. "He loves you," Ethan replied. "No matter what anyone says, a father never stops worrying." She turned to him. "Do you think he will forgive me for running away? If he's the man you say he is, he already has." She rested her chin on her knees. "When I left, I thought I was being brave, but now I just feel small. I wanted to stop the fighting before it began, but maybe I was foolish to believe I could change anything. Ethan looked into the glowing lantern. Hope always looks foolish when you're in the dark, he said. But it's what pulls people toward the light. Helena stared at him for a while. You always find words that calm me. Maybe it's because machines don't listen, he said with a small grin. I had to practice on something. She laughed quietly. Then I am glad you practiced. Later, when the night grew deeper, Helena lay down near the small altar and closed her eyes. Ethan stayed awake, keeping watch by the door. The forest outside was alive with sounds, owls calling, branches creaking, but it felt safe. He looked back at her sleeping form, her little crown resting beside her. The glow from the lantern touched her hair, and she looked peaceful, free from fear for once. Ethan leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of what lay ahead. He knew that their peace at the chapel would not last. Sooner or later, the world would come searching again. But for that moment, under the quiet stars and the shelter of broken walls, he let himself believe that they had found something rare, something worth protecting. Outside, the wind rose softly, carrying the faint echo of distant horns from the city far behind them. The sound was low, barely heard, but it reminded Ethan that their story was not over, was only pausing, like the calm breath before a storm. He whispered quietly, almost to himself, "Tomorrow, we keep moving." And above them, as if to answer, a single leaf drifted down from the tallest tree, falling gently into the lantern's glow before settling beside the sleeping princess, a small sign that peace was still watching over them. Dawn came quietly over the forest, painting the world in pale gold. Ethan woke first. The small fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the air was cool. He stretched his arms and looked at Helena. The princess was still asleep on her folded cloak, the morning light touching her face. For the first time since he had found her, she looked peaceful. Her lips curved into a faint, gentle smile, as if she were dreaming of home. Ethan stood and stepped outside the chapel. The forest was calm. Its mist hung above the ground, and sunlight filtered through the tall trees. He breathed in deeply. For a moment, he allowed himself to hope that their troubles were over. But then he saw something on the river road below, a faint glimmer, like the reflection of steel. He cursed softly. The guards were coming. He hurried back inside and touched Helena's shoulder. "We have to move," he said. She blinked, still half asleep. "What's wrong?" "They've found the trail. We must leave now." In a moment, she was on her feet, her small cloak tied around her shoulders. Ethan packed their few things, grabbing the repaired lantern and a small loaf of bread. They stepped into the forest, keeping low among the trees. From behind them came the faint echo of shouting voices. The sound grew louder. Lene looked back, worry clouding her face. Ethan took her hand to steady her as they crossed a stream, the cold water rushing over their boots. "It's all right," he said. "The forest is wide. You can still lose them." They moved quickly through the thick woods, the morning light shifting through the leaves like golden mist. Birds scattered as they passed, and branches brushed against their faces. Ethan led her along paths only hunters used, narrow and tangled. But even as they ran, Helena's steps faltered. She was small and tired from the days of travel. Her breath came in short bursts. "Ethan," she whispered, "I can't keep up." He stopped and crouched beside her. Her face was pale. For a moment he thought about lifting her and carrying her, but she shook her head. "No, I must walk," she said softly. He nodded. Then we walked slower. They haven't seen us yet. They pressed on, the noise of the guards fading for a while. The forest grew deeper, the air cooler. Finally, they reached a wide clearing where the trees bent like a doorway to the sky. Beyond the hill, in the distance, the tall white walls of the capital shimmered faintly under the sun. Helena stared at it. "That's my home," she said. "The council will be there, and my father too." Ethan followed her gaze. "You want to go back?" She took a deep breath. "Not to surrender. I need to speak to my father. You must hear the truth from me, not from his advisors." Ethan frowned. "They will arrest me if I walk with you. Then wait in the hills," she said. "I will tell him what you did for me. He will not harm you." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. This small, brave girl had already changed everything in his life. "All right," he said quietly, "but you won't go in alone. I'll walk with you until the gates." That evening, as the sun dipped low, they reached the edge of the capital. The guards at the outer road stopped in shock when they saw Helena stepping forward, her head held high, despite her small size, her crown glinting faintly through her hair. "The princess," one guard whispered. "She is alive." The news spread like fire. Within minutes, soldiers, townsfolk, and even the palace servants filled the streets. Helena walked straight ahead, while Ethan followed close behind. No one dared to move against her. Even the captain of the guards dropped to one knee. When they reached the palace courtyard, King Alaric, the ruler of Halloween, was already waiting at the top of the steps. His face showed both relief and sorrow. He came forward, bending to her level. "My daughter," he said in a shaking voice. "You have caused me sleepless nights." Helena bowed her head. "Father, forgive me. I ran away because I feared for our people. The council is leading you toward war. They said I should marry for peace, but I saw it was only a chain in disguise." The king looked at her for a long time. Then he turned to the crowd, raising his hand. "Everyone, listen. My daughter speaks with courage. Let there be no war. Let no man bind her to a choice she does not make." A murmur rose among the people, first surprise, then cheering. The captain of the guard looked at the princess, then at Ethan. "We thought he had stolen you," the captain said. Helena shook her head firmly. "You saved me." The king stepped closer to Ethan. "You risked much for her." Ethan bowed his head. "I only did what seemed right." The king smiled faintly. "And then stay in my service. Not as a soldier, but as an engineer. We will build things that help, not harm." Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "If it serves peace, I will." Helena turned to him and smiled with tears in her eyes. "You see, Ethan? The door to peace does exist after all." That night, the city was alive with light and music. The people celebrated not victory, but hope. In the midst of it all, the tiny princess who had once hidden in a dusty workshop stood beside her father. Her hand resting on the railing, as the city cheered below, Ethan stood at the base of the steps, watching silently. For once the sound of joy was louder than any engine he had ever known. He looked up at the bright sky over Halloween and smiled to himself. The story that had begun on a quiet orchard road under a silver light had ended where it belonged, under open skies. With peace finally in reach,